everyone. You are joining the fourth and final roundtable of the International Borlaug Dialogues Roundtable discussion on international cooperation. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for staying with us. We hope everybody is enjoying today's last really engaging areas of discussion, including the workshop that you just saw. We're concluding with the fourth roundtable discussion, moving towards the UN's 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. We know we must unite everyone together in powerful action items and steps going forward. We've tried to present roundtables, workshops, and keynotes across all sectors, addressing and elevating the innovations, actions, and steps that all actors must take. There's so much more to address, but we hope that through this discussion, you will see and hear more about the kind of effective governance, the systematic action, and implementation of transformations that must take place to attain the SDGs of 2030. We have an esteemed panel assembled for you once again, and I'm happy to introduce all of our speakers. First, we have Gilbert Arapbor. Gilbert is a farmer and lecturer from Kenya, joining us from the Global Farmer Network. Welcome, Gilbert. Godfrey Bahigwa. Thank you. Godfrey Bahigwa is Director of Rural Economy and Agriculture from the African Union Commission. Hello, Godfrey.
Hi, Barbara. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Agnes Kalabata, Special Envoy for the 2021 UN Food Systems Summit, but also President of the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. Greetings, Agnes.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Barbara. Good to see you all, colleagues.
Dr. David Nabarro, 2018 World Food Prize laureate, but founder of 4SD. Greetings, David.
Hello, Barbara. Hello, everybody. It's nice to be back, even though I'm not in Iowa, but I feel like it.
Well, and we wish everyone was in Iowa, but we're doing pretty well. We have a great collection in coming from around the world. Jeff Rowe is president of Syngenta Seeds. Hello, Jeff.
Hi, Barbara. Great to be with everyone today. Looking forward to the discussion.
And we have a special guest, Mai Tin Yumon is here. She is UN Food Systems Summit Action Track for Youth Vice Chair, and also a program director for Indigenous Peoples Development Program from the Chin Human Rights Organization. Thank you for dialing in, Mai Tin.
Thank you, Barbara. Great to see you all.
Thank you. In person, we have Jim Barnhart, Deputy Coordinator for Development and Feed the Future, and also the Assistant to the Administrator for the Bureau of Resilience and Food Security, USAID. Welcome, Jim.
Great to be here, Barbara. Thank you.
Kundabi Kandir-san, she's new Managing Director for Global Engagement and Innovation, and she's on the Executive Management Team of the CGIAR.
Great to be here, Barbara.
And Jeff Juke is also here, Director of Agriculture Policy, also relatively new in your position, and he's from the U.S. Department of State.
Thank you, Barbara. Very pleased to be here with the group today.
Did I miss Manuel? My apologies. Manuel, with us, also calling in from Costa Rica, is that right?
Yes. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you from Costa Rica, where the ICA headquarters is located.
He's Director General, Inter-American Agricultural Agency. Okay, for all of you all that are tuning in online, you can read all of their biographies and the speakers of these speakers in Huba below on your video screen. So let's get started, turning right away to David. David, please open us with some of your remarks and thoughts framing this discussion.
Well, thank you very much, Barbara, and hello to everybody, wherever you are. Do you know, but those of us who were involved in the Food Systems Summit, 23rd and 24th of September, I tell you, we are still coming to terms with what an extraordinary moment it has been. It's the first ever United Nations Summit on Food Systems. And in a second, I want to talk about what that might mean. But let me stress to everybody that this summit took place during a ferocious pandemic, which is having adverse impacts on food systems in multiple settings. And I actually think that COVID-19 encouraged all concerned to look hard at the contribution of food systems to the future prospects for people and the planet. Quite simply, if food systems are got right, then there's a real chance that other aspects of human and planetary development might be got right by 2030. In particular, issues around nature, issues around the environment, issues around climate change, and issues around people's health and nutrition, as well as issues around gender and the role of young people in the future, and indeed the evolution of rural spaces, all depend on getting food systems to where they need to be. And that's what this summit really looked at. A systems approach to food really does mean going beyond seeing food just as a traded commodity, produced as cheaply as possible and marketed widely without regard to the consequences. And of course, nobody here believes that that's the way forward. But to a wider community, I believe that recognizing that food is a vital connector between people and also an important link between people and the planet has been a hugely important aspect of this summit. And it's what was taken forward within countries and communities everywhere. The summit stimulated 148 countries to undertake dialogues on the future of food. Not just dialogues between people who normally meet together, but to widen the engagement of groups who normally are not there. The summit led to 108 countries developing pathways, strategic pathways to food systems of the future. An extraordinary outcome, given that all of these pathways have been posted in public and can be used to assess the thinking about food that's going on in the different countries with varying degrees of political endorsement. And lastly, the summit is calling for a future of action on food that is just different from what we've done up till now. Different in ways in which people are engaged, and different in ways in which we look at how planetary resources are used and indeed hopefully regenerated in food systems. If we look at the statements from the national leaders, more than 140 of them, we see that there is a growing interest in looking at food very widely and acting on it in a multi-stakeholder, multi-sectoral, multi-level way. And I think that's going to change things. But of course, there are obviously controversies and questions when we open an issue up like this. First of all, what are the values and principles that are going to outline our work on food systems of the future? Where is the right to food? How important is it? Are we going to actually internalize it in our work? Why on earth are we seeing increasing numbers of hungry when the right to food has been agreed over years? Why isn't it being put into practice? Why isn't hunger seen as a deep moral issue? And what about the financial commitments that were made at the summit? Who's going to actually come forward and actually assess and call to account those who are offering these massive amounts of money, for example, to reduce hunger? And then lastly, are there going to be better governance structures on food? Can it become an issue that's taken across different government ministries and that actually engages all the stakeholders, particularly farmer organizations and those representing food workers who have such a rotten time so often? So everybody, That's what we're going to be discussing today. A very exciting open up of the issue, but how is it going to be taken forward? Barbara, thank you for the chance to be here. Really looking forward to contributing.
Great. Thank you so much, David. So we know that there were tremendous commitments made at the summit and really throughout the year, a variety of initiatives and commitments that have developed and been announced. And at this point, it would be really helpful to begin to talk about what is it that we can do to really leverage these commitments in both the public sector and the private sector for even greater impact. Just building on everything that you said, David, what is it that we need to really motivate the stakeholders at all levels and get to that action and implementation? Manuel, we're going to give you the floor first, if you don't mind responding to this.
Thank you once again, Barbara and colleagues, for having such opportunity participating in this high-level roundtable. Let me begin emphasizing that today's overlapping worldwide sanitary, socioeconomic, and climatic crisis is affecting all of us and highlighting the urgent necessity of revising the traditional international cooperation approaches in the search for more sustainable development pathways. In this context, the UN Food System Summit underscored the importance of transforming agriculture and food systems, opening up a long-term process in which other equally important milestones such as COP26, WTO ministerial meeting, G20 should also be taken into consideration in order to identify the more effective alternatives for moving from consensus to action. This sort of renewed multilateralism has set agri-food systems at the top of the global agenda and forces to review the basis of how we approach and organize international cooperation. So from my perspective, some aspects to consider in order to assure that cooperation efforts have a greater impact include the following. The first is about the need for a much better coordination mechanisms among international, hemispheric, sub-regional, national, and local level. At the present time, it is my perception that it's especially important to fill the gap between the international and national level. The second aspect is about the need for recognizing that the challenges to be confronted call for a multi-stakeholders approach involving public, private, and grassroots organizations. The increased role of the private sector in agricultural development is one of the defining aspects of our times. Probably we're not making yet an optimal use of its full capacities. The third dimension is the need to address cross-cutting issues, recognizing the importance of having projects considering at the same time economic, environmental, and social dimension. And the fourth point is about the generation of regional public goods through bringing together countries with cultural and historic ties, so scaling up impact and promoting regional integration processes. Just to conclude, let me highlight recognizing the crucial role the Americas play in ensuring food and nutrition security, as well as global environmental security and sustainability. In this sense, in connection with the UN Food System Summit process, we have already started working on the basis of the dimensions I have just mentioned, and we're able to develop an hemispheric consensus bringing together all the countries of the Americas regarding how to approach the needed agri-food system transformation. We now expect to move to the more challenging level of transforming those consensus points once again to effective actions. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you so much for bringing those perspectives in from IICA. trying to understand the need for increased coordination, that capacity that's needed, cross-cutting issues, and addressing the regional cultural processes that are need to be integrated. All of these seem like very strong priorities. Agnes, you've been leading through the UN Food Systems Summit, and of course, with your tremendous perspective across Africa through AGRA. Please give us some guidance on what you see are some of the next steps in governance and implementation.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you for having me. And I hope that you all, the people that are on this call, were also part of the tremendous effort that was mobilized through the Food Systems Summit. 50,000 people, just to give you the statistics, that watched the summit across 193 countries. So the reason I'm giving these statistics, Barbara, is just to help you understand how many people were engaged across the 18 months, but also the actual summit as it came to fruition. I believe what we have been able to do with the summit is to change how we think about food systems and the urgency around what needs to be done to ensure that food systems can help us deliver on a number of issues. So we have an opportunity to harness that energy, that consensus that has been built at national level. David just talked about the national dialogues that are going on. 149 countries are engaged in dialogues, but 165 countries did step forward with clear commitments and statements around how they are going to change things in their countries. Maybe not all of them will be going in at the same time and doing the changes we are hoping for at the same time. But we have an opportunity to capitalize on whoever is moving forward the right way, learning from that, and really using it to continue growing a massive effort across countries. What is critical here is to continue taking advantage of the need to coordinate across sectors and ensure that coordination across sectors is coming through the way it should. We have an opportunity to think both domestic and international and make sure that we, as countries, as member states that are trying to move things forward, we do understand the implication of moving forward on food systems approach from a domestic perspective, but also from an international perspective, supporting and helping countries that will be part of coming through that and yet are not able to come through, to be able to do that. And here, let me say that we have been able to define what we are calling means of implementation. We are focusing on how we leverage financing from different countries, but also from private sector, and that is being defined, and ensuring that that definition allows countries that right now need resources to be able to move forward, countries that have been able to define but also clarify what they want, priorities that they want to implement to move forward, should have an opportunity to do that, and they will only be able to do that if they have access to funding. There's an opportunity for member states to come through on governance of food systems. One of the things we've done from a food system perspective is provide a space for everybody to feel engaged, for everybody to feel the responsibility that is needed for them to be able to, for our food system to change. But for that to happen, we must keep them at the table. That governance, national states, national governments, putting in place mechanisms that will continue to involve private sector, civil society, farmers, producers, to ensure that they come through. Remembering very well that producers did put forward a declaration, private sector did put forward a declaration, youth did put forward declarations, that we need to take and leverage these declarations and make sure that society is being held accountable for the things it has said it will be able to do. But if we lock them out, they will not be able to do it. The third bit that we defined is innovation. We need to continue innovating, recognizing fully well that we got here in the first place because of innovation. There are so many things we've been able to overcome. We produce so much more food than we produced 50 years ago when this whole perspective of feeding people when we started focusing on a green revolution with Norman Borlaug. We produce so much more food, but we need to produce food smarter. We need to think about the impact on our environment. To be able to do that, to be able to produce more healthy food, we need to think about the types of innovation that should be in our midst. So part of harnessing and taking advantage of these commitments is ensuring that innovation is happening and is being delivered at country level. At the end of the day, the Food System Summit has put forward so many solutions, so many ideas through coalitions, through different initiatives that have been put forward. But we will have to ensure that the resources are being available, that coordination is happening right, that governance is happening right, and the science that has come through the Food System Summit is being given priority and being given an opportunity to actually inform and enhance innovation. So there's a lot to do and a lot to take advantage of. But I think the most important of all is the food system thinking that going forward will ensure that actually we don't go back into our silos at global level, at national level, but also at regional level.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those comments. It's really incredible to hear this perspective of all of the levels of actors that have to be engaged. And we know that the Food Systems Summit, if it's done so much, it's really put food systems under the microscope. And the call to produce food smarter is absolutely well taken. And I think we should have continue our conversation weaving in about the summit itself, because we know that there was so much support for what went on, and there was also controversy, and there were also challenges in trying to elevate so many dialogues and so much discussion. So how do we move past that as well? We'll continue that discussion. Turning to you, Jim, the U.S. has committed so much, and particularly recently. Talk to us about how this is going to advance implementation.
Barbara, first of all, thank you for using this important platform to talk about this issue. This is so near and dear to my heart. Implementation, that's what I love. I'm a field guy. So for me, it's all about how we take ideas and make them into reality, right? So it has been quite a week. At the UN General Assembly, originally, President Biden announced a $10 billion U.S. commitment to ending poverty, hunger, and malnutrition at home and abroad. And then Secretary Vilsack and Administrator Power followed up at the Food Systems Summit to dive a little bit in more detail. And then just this past week, in fact, just yesterday, the Secretary and the Administrator were on a White House event in which the Global Food Security Strategy for the United States government was officially launched. And so it has been a very big week. I should mention it started on Monday with a wonderful event at Delaware State University where we signed our first USAID MOU with the HBCU to dive deeper into to utilize the expertise and experience there at Delaware State, and more are coming. So it's been an amazing week, but now we have to think about implementation. Our food security strategy focuses and elevates really climate change, diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, and addressing the pandemic. And it then integrates nutrition into all of the work that we do, taking the food systems approach that David mentioned earlier. So how do we do it? And let's get to the heart of your question. I want to talk about three principles that are just, I think, will help us get there as donors and frankly, as all international partners. Number one, I think we need to leave our institutional egos at the door. And I say that as someone who has the shaking hands brand wherever I go. In fact, I usually have my banner behind me with it. All of us in the international community have our institutions, CGIAR, World Food Prize. But if we're going to make this work, if we're going to go at it from a systems approach, we need to be able to start working much more collaboratively, much more open to allowing the broader goal to be the end and not necessarily need to take credit for it, right? So that would be one principle that I would state. We've been trying hard at this. We've got a wonderful 10-year example in Feed the Future. It involves 12 U.S. government entities, including State Department, USAID, Department of Agriculture, all working together. And within USAID, we've created councils, leadership councils around key aspects of our work: nutrition, water, resilience, and bringing all parts of our agency together, again, focusing on the problem and not getting too wrapped up in our institutions. That's principle one. Principle two, I would say, is we've got to be ready to take more risks in what we do. I noticed, I think it was in your first session, Julie Howard mentioned this idea of we got to get away from the 4-year projects that you guys are always doing. I know it was a very pointed comment, so I took it, and I think that's true. So we need to rethink, and we need to be willing rethink how we do our business. We need to rethink how we contribute to international and bilateral national programs, as Agnes was talking about the NDCs and the national action plans particularly post COP26. But we can do that across the board. So we really do need to be willing to take more risks. And that's where partnerships come in. When you bring partners in, private sector, civil society, other governments, you are, by that very nature, starting to de-risk whatever it is you want to try to do. And I think we've played it safe for too long, and this crisis is such that we need to be ready to step up and take some risks. And we need partners that all have skin in the game to be working with us, to be willing to take that risk. The third principle that I think we need to embrace as we go forward is we need to stop being solutions looking for problems. And now I'm speaking particularly for Washington-based folks or other headquarters-based folks, where we like to think that we've got the ideas of what needs to be done in any given country. We've got the expertise and the experience, and we do. However, we're not spending enough time giving enough voice and leadership to local partners. Again, public sector, private sector, civil society, marginalized populations, women and youth. And so we need systems as we develop programming. We need to give leadership roles to our host country partners and allow them to guide us, right? We need to stop thinking that we have the answers to whatever the particular solution is, because it will vary from country to country. Let me stop there. I think I've probably spoken too long.
No, that's great. And really tremendous to hear priorities like holding hands going forward and de-risking, taking risks, but de-risking through partnerships, really, and not being solutions looking for problems. I think everybody appreciates that. And you see your projects and many activities moving in this direction already. But great to hear all of that. My 10, you are calling in from Myanmar, I believe. We see your dark setting. We hope you're okay. Please give us your perspective. You're on the ground.
Thank you, Barbara. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So yeah, I'm joining in from Myanmar, and I've been. I'm a human rights activist. So like many other youth leaders and human rights activists in the country, the place I was staying was raided by the soldiers 2 weeks ago. So I'm on the run, and I'm in the forest. I'm joining in from the forest. So please excuse my dark setting here. But at least I've got, luckily, I've got the internet connection and the battery to join the session alongside my mentors and former colleagues throughout the Food System Summit process. It's really great to be here with all of you and other great leaders also. So I've been listening to the previous speakers, and I think everything that I wanted to say was already covered. And I'm so glad because I think even though we come from different backgrounds, we share the same views and the same values. And I think this post Food System Summit is a really great moment for all of us to talk together, and then actions and implementation will even be much greater. So I totally agree to what my co-panelists mentioned already. So being myself, being an indigenous climate change activist and food security advocate, being in this advocacy world, let's say, and being in communication with international communities, being a part of this advocacy world for about a decade, a very strong feeling and realization that I have is that we speak different languages, especially between these the people who are involved in this donors, community, supporting communities, and those who are really on the ground. We speak two different languages, even when we are in the same dialogue, when we are in the same room. And donors, investors, their language mainly being numbers, outputs, percentage, while the languages of these local actors mainly being stories and impacts of individual lives levels, which means we can't just expect these two main actors to see eye to eye each other instantly and be on the same page in a very short time, despite the big commitments that we have heard during the Food Systems Summit and then beyond. I was really, how should I say, I was really amazed, and I was really inspired to see the commitments, like how many commitments, like Dr. Agnes and David also mentioned already. So I was thrilled, really thrilled as a youth also, and being a part of this the real people-oriented summit, the first one that I've been a part of. Yeah, I was really amazed. I was really thrilled. But at the same time, I was really, what I was really seeing was that we need empowerment on both sides. So we saw the commitments, the financial support, and all these commitments, but empowering. So we usually use the word empowerment or empowering mainly for okay, let's say in the development world we called it. We usually call these recipient. How should I say? Recipient communities, usually beneficiaries, or sometimes we call them implementing partners. We usually use the word empowerment only for this side, but what I really see through my experience is we need empowering on both sides. So it can be like donors, investors, either from private sector, whether from government fundings or wherever it comes from. We need empowerment on the side of those people who will be working on the side of the donors, investors, and at the same time, those who are on the ground, so that they can meet in the equilibrium. We need equilibrium. We can't expect either side to take more and then to be responsible for this whole transformation. These both sides need to meet at the equilibrium. This is what I have observed. So what we really need on the side of, as Jim just mentioned, we really need on the side of the donors or investors, we really need inclusive and transparent priority making or priority setting. And that would not only be at the implementing stage, but it needs to start from the planning period. So for our indigenous communities, we usually use this free prior informed consent standards and procedures for any investment that is going to be able to make those projects or investments or partnerships a success. So this is what I can share for this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate those comments, and coming from the voice of a young person committed through the action track, through the Food Systems Summit. Critical voices to be not only included, but truly integrated, listened to, and knowing that the voice of the next generation, the good advice you're offering for transparency and equity inclusion, I'm sure everyone takes that to heart. We want to shift now a bit of the conversation, because through the kinds of priorities that you're hearing, we know that food systems transformation has to be rooted in the science, evidence, and the incredible amount of knowledge that's accumulated already. And what we'd like to do is ask several folks to, from your perspectives, comment on how do you best utilize all that's been accumulated. So Jeff, kick us off in this discussion.
All right. Thanks a lot, Barbara. It's great to be with the panel and all of you today. Look, innovation is near and dear to my heart. It's where I've spent the majority of my career, and I think it's a really important aspect to this overall conversation. And there's obviously no shortage of creative ideas on how we take on this global food system challenge. And for somebody who's spent my whole life in agriculture and my whole professional career working in the space, it's great to see the intention and focus that this important topic is getting. And so I'm really encouraged by that. At the same time, for those of us who have worked in agriculture for a long time, we recognize that this is a really complex industry. You've got a supply chain that's very fragmented. And really, we're at a point in time where our society as a whole knows less about where their food comes from and cares more about that topic. And so we've got, I think, a very big communication challenge in front of us as we talk about what our industry does and what our industry could do. At the same time, you couple that kind of lack of basic understanding with the fact that we have some of the most sophisticated science in the world embedded in agriculture. Some of the most exciting innovations that are happening in science anywhere in the world are happening in food and agriculture today. And I predict that trend will continue. And so as we think about that dynamic, again, we've got a very important communication role to play, not only with society, but also with regulators and policymakers, because the science is moving very fast. And we all know that the science has to move very fast to meet the challenges in front of us. And frankly, we have not done a great job as an industry. I'm speaking now as an industry representative of communicating these complicated topics with society. And so for us to really be successful, we've got to be able to take these complicated matters and make them more digestible. We also have to embrace the fact that trust really matters. When you're dealing with these type of topics, people are not going to become PhD experts in molecular biology or chemistry or whatever innovation you're bringing to the market. And so you've got to be able to establish trust in this space. And I really liked a couple of Jim's comments. I thought those principles were really well laid out. I thought this ability of taking on more risk, but then also de-risking through partnerships, I think is a really critical concept, because we know full well as a very large agriculture input company that there are people that will not trust us just because of who we are as a company. We don't necessarily like that, but it's the reality. And so we have worked really hard to establish credibility with other institutions, partnerships with other institutions that understand what we're trying to do as a company, as an industry, and help us not only communicate, but also understand issues and questions to be able to try to resolve issues that may come up. So I really do see a shift, a big shift in this partnership arena. And I would encourage all of us to do more in this space. But I think it does come down to trust and credibility at the end of the day. And also the notion of being able to have risk. Risk is great, but we also have to have a reliable regulatory system on which to base that risk. Our company spends close to $2 billion a year on R&D. It's a very long cycle process. It takes many years for products to get to commercialization. And we accept that. That's our challenge. That's what we do. The difficult thing is when the regulatory framework shifts in unpredictable, non-scientific based ways, such that that innovation, which I think is critical to food security and the food security system, when that innovation is put at risk because of those unexplained shifts. And so we believe very strongly in output-based, outcome-based requirements, and think that some of the input-based requirements, such as just a blanket reduction of pesticides or an embracement of organic at the expense of science, we think that's the wrong approach. We think it needs to be much more about outcome-based. The last thing I would say is that I think two things. One, the innovation machine that is focused on food and agriculture is incredible. I've been in this industry now for about 25 years, and what I see in terms of the quality of the science, the focus of the science, is remarkable. And it's not just based on yield. Yield will continue to be a very, very critical aspect, because we know that one of the most important factors for reducing climate change and reducing the impact of agriculture on climate change is to increase yields. We know that, and that's really what the industry is focused on. But we're also focused on many other very important things like biodiversity, soil health, new areas where we are able to take what we have been able to do in the past and refocus on new, what I think will be very important areas for our industry and our society moving forward. And then the last thing I want to say, as a part-time fifth-generation farmer and an industry representative, I think keeping farmers and the sustainability of farmers' livelihood and the equity of farmers' livelihood at the center of the discussion is absolutely critical. And that becomes harder as our society moves further away from production agriculture. It takes more effort. But I would encourage all of us to do that, because I think it's absolutely critical to a sustainable food system around the world. So thank you.
Great. Thank you for that. Farmers at the center, of course, that's the World Food Prize moniker. But really, hearing from Syngenta in all of these areas of priority is very illuminating. We want to turn back to the stage now. Kundavi, your global engagement and innovation managing director of one of the largest of the world research institutions, bringing all of this science and information forward. Please, your perspective, and then we'll go to you, Jeff. Other Jeff.
This is an important question, Barbara, and Jim started with the guiding principles, and I also want us to start by saying that there is now consensus on a number of key principles over the past few years. What do I mean by that? That we all now agree that to transform agri-food systems in ways that it has to be good for people and good for planet. There's general full consensus on that. Then there is also a need to meet the multiple demands. We're not just talking about food security. We are now all talking about nutrition security. We are talking about livelihoods, not livelihoods alone. We are talking about jobs, climate. When we talk about climate, we are talking about adaptation, mitigation. So we all recognize the sort of a multiple demands. Therefore, issues are much more complex. And there is also a broader agreement that the transformation of food and land and water systems does not come by itself, particularly in a climate crisis and biodiversity crisis. It needs scientific research and innovation should be the heart of it. And we have never had such a focus on research and innovation, and that is getting so much more attention now. This was a fact recognized in the Statement of Action from the UN Food System Summit a few weeks ago, where it was highlighted very clearly the importance of science innovation across the food systems. It came through the G7. It came also out in the G20 communique. So this growing recognition and acceptance and appreciation is a very good thing, because we never used to get a good understanding and appreciation on the importance of science and innovation. Now, we always talk about the complex interconnected challenges of today. And the more we unpack the issues, what the issues are among various factors, and also what are the concrete actions that are practical and workable, we need to sort of get everybody to understand it. And that's where the importance of science and evidence comes, because it also helps to guide your investment strategies. When we talk in CGIAR about science, it's not just about the seeds that are resilient to droughts and floods, but the innovations that go behind it to make it acceptable and adapted for farmers to really practice across. So in that sense, the importance of science and innovation coming together. When we talk about the mapping of water resources, it's just not that alone, the research, but the data that comes with respect to people, the use, the competing use, and therefore what kind of measures are needed that we would use a much more practical way of using those scarce resources. So you need that research, science, and innovation for you to have much more targeted, evidence-based intervention. So that's why in CGIAR, we really focused on delivering science and innovation. And we're also talking a lot about systems approach. One of the big focus of our work would be systems transformation. And when we talk about systems transformation, it's not about technology alone. We are talking about bundling of innovation, innovation from technology, innovation from social, institutional, policy aspects, all coming together. We heard a lot about partnership. All these things will not happen if we don't have the private sector, civil societies, and communities all working together. So that's another important area of focus that we really need to. But lastly, I just wanted to emphasize, all of this will not happen if we don't have the funding. And since Jim is sitting next to me, I would emphasize that more. So a lot more on knowing the science and evidence is important. Partnership is important, we know, but it is the funding that helps us to scale up and scale up for impact. And that's what everybody is demanding, not research and science sitting there, but making it happen on the ground that actually it produces results for the people on the ground.
Excellent. So with that, we are going to turn in a bit to talk more about investment strategies that are needed. But in advance of that, Jeff, from Department of State perspective, give us more on your sense of implementation and actions needed.
Thank you, Barbara. Well, first of all, it's very clear that Norman Borlaug's vision of science and innovation being needed to solve seemingly intractable problems, that vision is more timely than ever today. And I think we should keep that in mind with everything that we do. It's been very interesting listening to the other speakers talk about the way all of these challenges that we're facing today are linked. The food security challenges, the climate challenges, the problems we're facing have become so complex that we must have holistic solutions that enable the farmers, the people on the ground, enable them to have a wide range of tools available and to be able to choose for themselves and have the education to choose for themselves the tools that are most useful and most suitable to the specific situation in which they find themselves. Earlier this week, the State Department hosted a side event, and my main takeaway from everything that the speakers at that side event said was precisely this: we need to have a wide range of tools. The specific ones we were focusing on in that side event were agroecology and biotechnology. These are just two of a range of tools, but the main point that all of the speakers made is that we need to get past old dichotomies and arguments, pitting these two ideas against one another and finding the things that are useful in both of them so that we can offer up the widest range of tools to solve these otherwise intractable problems. We know that farmers around the world for centuries and beyond have embraced a variety of agroecological principles, found things that are useful in those, and applied them to increase yields, preserve resources, and so forth. More recently, new approaches, whether it be genome editing, digital agriculture, use of data in agriculture, all of these things offer new potential and new possibilities going forward. And we need to find ways that long-standing practices and newer opportunities, newer tools that are available can work together. We think it is very unfortunate that a lot of products and tools that have been developed using biotechnology have faced too many barriers to getting into the hands of farmers and into the ground. And we need to find ways to streamline processes and make sure that regulatory processes are actually achieving the purpose they're set out to do. I would like to mention three specific things that I think that we can be doing that can help. First of all, as I've been trying to say so far, I think we need to stop trying to relitigate the debates of the last 20 or 30 years on products that have been proven to be safe, that have been thoroughly studied, and the products of genetic engineering. Second, we need to look at all the available data on other new approaches, like specifically genome editing, looking at these things from a very pragmatic, science and evidence-based approach, and ensure that we're making policy and regulatory decisions that are based on facts and that are based on science. And then third, and I think this one is absolutely critical, and some of the other speakers have already alluded to this, we need to all work together to increase the public's objective understanding of all of these new and emerging technologies so that they can make objective decisions, again, especially talking about the people on the ground, farmers, so that they can make the most informed decisions about what tools will be most effective for them. We know that genome editing offers incredible possibilities and new approaches that can help with sustainability, can help reduce the use of water and other resources, can produce crops that have deeper roots, they're more effective in capturing carbon, that help us on the climate challenges. We know there are a lot of amazing possibilities out there, and we need to get these tools into people's hands. Just lastly, in conclusion, Barbara, I would just again make the point that all of the strategies that we carry out here, sectoral, ensuring that health, environment, industry, education, trade, commerce, and social issues are all part of coming up with the strategies that we need to solve the problems that we face. But since the challenges themselves are so interlinked and so complex, it really does require a holistic response on all of our part to get tools into people's hands that they can use. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for highlighting agritech and also biotechnology, agroecology and biotechnology, both and that they don't need to compete, and also reflecting on the streamlining that's needed in the regulatory process. We've heard that as a theme throughout the dialogues, actually spent a session focused on that, in-depth understanding what really is it that gene editing delivers and how do you advance technologies have proven already. So we want to shift and give others a chance to offer some comments. And Godfrey, we're coming to you next. We'd like to talk a little bit about investment strategies. The AU is doing so much in this area, new priorities, et cetera. Talk to us about not only your overall strategies and some of the activities going on, but investment especially.
Yes, thank you, Barbara, and happy to be on this panel. Let me start off by appreciating the opportunity to make these remarks in this high-level panel. As you may know, Africa's agenda for agricultural transformation is called the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program. We've been working at it since 2003. So now we are in our 18th year, grappling with how to transform Africa's agriculture to meet our development needs, especially food security and nutrition, and poverty reduction through agriculture. And so the UN Food System Summit, we are very happy with it because it brought additional impetus, created a new moment for Africa to focus more on our agenda. And we mobilized all our 55 member states to develop a common position that we presented to the Food System Summit with 43 game-changing pathways that we believe from the rest of the world will increase the pace and quality of the CAADP agenda on our continent. But let me say a little bit more about what we are thinking about doing post the summit. One is domesticating the pathways in national sectoral plans. And this is not something that is automatic. Just because our heads of state went to New York or joined online does not necessarily mean that this will be translated into action. And this is where the crux of the matter is. We need to continue working with our member states, supporting them to ensure that what they promised to do can be reflected in sectoral plans and therefore have a chance to be implemented. Secondly, as we know, the various pathways that our member states proposed, they fall in different sectors. They are not just in agriculture, and therefore we need to strengthen multi-sectoral coordination at national level. And again, this is not something that happens automatically because government agencies tend to operate in silos. And so getting them to work together is going to be something that's going to be quite important. And this is where political leadership is going to be very important for to ensure coordination at the highest level, preferably at presidential or prime ministerial level. My third point I want to make is going beyond national borders. So you sort out domestication, you sort out interministerial collaboration and coordination. Then what next? We need to worry about regional cooperation. And I was happy hearing that from Manuel, emphasizing regional integration, because it does open up opportunities for our farmers, for our producers, even for our consumers. Borders must be open. But for borders to be open for trade in agricultural goods and services means collaboration among neighboring countries, ensuring there is policy harmonization, there is regulatory mechanisms around food and food standards and food safety and so on. And finally, beyond those three aspects, I want to end with emphasizing the need to collaborate and support our countries in climate change, mitigation, and adaptation. Africa is the least emitter of greenhouse gases, but is the most impacted by the actions of the rest of the world. And so it is important that we support our member states to take actions on climate change, especially the implementation of the nationally determined contributions that they made in the Paris Agreement in 2015. But where implementation still remains a challenge, and we need to collectively work together, that if the food systems pathways are going to succeed, actions on climate change are going to be important. And so the discussions coming up in COP26 in Glasgow are going to be crucial discussions with implications for our continent. Let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Speaking to all of the issues from Africa-wide perspective and the importance of collaboration, you are most impacted by some of the changes going on, and perhaps with not as strong a voice as is needed going forward. So national agricultural plans, all of the implementing components that you have available are going to be so important to continue with. Gilbert, you've been waiting. We're really looking forward to hearing from you. Talk to us more from a farmer's perspective.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I am deeply honored to be in this forum where I am happy to have the president of AGRA, Dr. Agnes Kalibata, and the senior officials from the US government and other farmers. A pity about my new being in the forest. I hope you will be safe. I want to speak on several issues that farmers like myself would want to see in international cooperation and improved food systems, especially in this era of fighting with climate change and issues around the pandemic of COVID-19. Let me begin by commenting on genetic engineering to support the past speaker, to say that farmers require improved seeds continuously. And it can only happen through genetic engineering. And much as I may be happy that my country has opened the way for use of GMO seeds in cotton, and we can see cassava as a food coming on board very soon, we would like to see more on the major food that is consumed in my country and around East Africa. That is what you Americans call corn, that is maize. There is a lot of research on that, but so far our government has been a bit slow in releasing it to the farmers. So we look forward to that, and we want the international community through international cooperation to speak strongly on that to governments in Africa. The next item I want to speak about is about innovation in food production. Many farmers in Africa are subsistence farmers. They just produce enough for their consumption, but not even enough. Yet we have a lot of idle land in Africa. We lack innovative systems, and I would urge the international community to fund more of irrigated agriculture in Africa as a form of climate smart agriculture. Many parts of my country, for example, even my own farms, I farm on 25 acres, stays idle for 6 months because of the dry season. So we rely on rain-fed agriculture, and yet we cannot produce enough. In my country, we have more than 3 million people now without food. This afternoon, I was in another webinar similar to this one, and the discussion was precision agriculture. Farmers in Africa need these small scale as they are in their farming systems. We need to use precision agriculture to bring in the technology of drones and mechanization that can support improved food production. The other point that I need to mention is weather forecasting. In my country, there has been a lot of improvement on weather forecasting, and at least we can get the messages of when it's going to rain, when it's not going to rain. But most small-scale farmers in Africa do not have the smartphones to use in order to access that information. So we would like to see, through international cooperation, USAID and so on, AGRA, to support installation of weather stations close to farming areas, and of course, other infrastructure. That's what I would like to contribute to this discussion today. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Gilbert. All of you have presented such compelling comments and areas of priority, strategies, comprehensive approach needed, multi-sector, so much for all of us to digest. We're a bit coming to the close of our session in the next 10 minutes. So I'd like to jump to an opportunity for each of you to offer one final comment, or if you will, or perhaps a series of comments, 1 minute and a lightning round of closing comments. What are the key takeaways that you'd like to present to our audience and to each other today? And we'll just keep going in the order that we were thinking of proceeding in. So David, if you don't mind, what do you want to leave us with?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say to my tin yu mon, Kejuten Parsai. Thank you very much indeed. And I'd like to show why I'm so pleased. I think listening to her and then listening across our panel, we see two quite different approaches being talked about. One, the focus is on driving improvements in yield and quality, on achieving results through getting good tools into the right hands. And that's great. But then there's another way of working, which is to support dynamic local processes that include all with an interest, focusing on people, focusing on nature, focusing on interactions between them, with particularly food producers and processors right at the center, and especially the poor, the smallholders, and those with greatest struggles. But everybody, it's not a choice. We need to do both. We need to focus on results, yield, quality, tools, and the right hands, but we also need to focus on the process, a process in which everyone matters. That's my reflection, Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great sentiment, David. Kundavi, would you like to also offer your final thoughts?
Yeah, I heard a common theme of innovation from many speakers. But CGR research also shows that to bring critical food, climate, and water goals into reach, we need close to $15 billion US annually, 15 billion in innovation. But that's not what we are right now investing in. So therefore, how do we sort of really scale this up? If you look at countries' budget on research and innovation is actually in some countries actually going down, despite NEPAD has really highlighted the importance of research investment in Africa. Even among the development actors, CGIAR, our contributions are just a drop in the bucket. So in that sense, my key message would be, how are we leveraging private investment in agriculture? When I mean private investment, I mean even the farmers are putting their investment on the ground. That is private money going in. Retailers, agri-businesses, then the big corporates. There is a unique opportunity now to leverage and, in fact, influence their investment. Their investment is not just in terms of return, profits for the big corporates. They're also looking at how can they be putting their money in sustainable, environmentally friendly, socially responsible, and also that is sustainable for the long run. So how do we sort of leverage and influence private sector, big corporate investment in the agriculture and the food system sector, so the kind of innovation that we have and ambition that we have can actually bring about big results? So I would really look at, yes, government budgets are important, the enabling environment is important, all development actors' work is important, but let's try and leverage the big money that is going, including the small farmers' money that is put in food systems. So that's where I would end.
Thank you. Excellent. Manuel, can we hear from you?
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to emphasize about the necessity to put in motion a much more intelligent agriculture, overpassing the restricted vision of an agriculture just producing commodities. So everybody agrees about the necessity to incorporate the dimension of nutrition, of having an alliance with environment, and especially reducing inequity. So from ICA point of view, we defend gene editing with a pragmatic approach and looking for more regulations, digital agriculture, new approaches for soil erosion, and a new generation of policy for empowering rural farmers. In this regard, cooperativism is something very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. My 10.
Thank you, Barbara. So yeah, I just would like to highlight again that we truly need, of course, all the speakers highlighted a lot about the need for sectoral cooperation and multi-stakeholder coordination. And why? We also talk a lot about people-centered, people-oriented solutions. The main reason is that I would like all of us to remember that solutions are on the ground. We need to include these people, not just because of the challenges they are facing, the problems that they are facing, but because they have the solutions. So these communities have solutions, farmers communities have solutions, especially women who are being who have been a part of food systems since time immemorial. So these women, they have the knowledge, the experience to help us transform our food systems. And youth, they have the power and knowledge to be working together with us. Thank you so much.
Great. Agnes, can we come back to you? And then we'll go to Jim.
Thank you, Barbara. I just want to conclude with helping everybody understand the complexity of food systems. Food systems are extremely complex, whether you talk about it from value chain perspective, from value perspective, what we do with them, consumption or waste, from engagement and the multi-nature of stakeholders that are engaged in food systems and that benefit from food systems. How we go forward from here, having had a successful summit that managed to bring everybody around the table, how we go forward from here will depend on how we as institutions, but also as leaders, try to understand the complexity of food systems and try to keep everybody working together. There's no single player that can solve this problem. There's no single actor that can solve this problem. Working together we can, but that's going to take a lot of leaving our egos and logos behind, as I think it's Jim who mentioned it and a number of other people. We leave them behind and we focus on the future. The future of food systems is about delivering on SDGs, is about delivering on the 2030 agenda in a way that allows us to impact environment, biodiversity, food for people, and health. This is something we can do, but we will need leadership and governance that leaves no one behind, especially women, indigenous people, and youth that are not always around the table. So I look forward to the leaders of this world, the member states that stepped forward, 165 of them that stepped forward to really set an example, as we saw with the US government. I'm not saying it because Jim is there. US government made a commitment internationally and domestically, recognizing that this is not a development challenge, that this is actually as much a domestic challenge, and we all have to engage. So thank you, Barbara.
Thank you so much. We'll come back to Jim and then back to Africa. To you, Godfrey. Go ahead.
Oh, me first.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Look, this is an incredibly exciting time, and I am, and I can't speak on behalf of the U.S. government broadly in terms of the Feed the Future program and USAID. We're ready to implement. We're ready to get the job done. We've got the resources set aside. We have a strategy in place. We know what we want to do. We've got great partners like the CGIAR, the Innovation Lab. So we know what needs to happen in a broad sense on the research front. We need to get that applied in the field. We're looking for partners. We need partners who are ready to work with us, put skin in the game, and then hold us accountable. David made the point. People need to be upfront with us and tell us when we're doing good and when we're not. And we will do our best to adjust accordingly. And I will stop there. Leave it at one. I've gone over a minute already. So.
That's optimistic and wonderful to hear. Thank you. Godfrey, and then we'll come back to you, Jeff. Jeff Rowe.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Your final comments.
Can I go ahead?
Yes, go ahead. Your final comments.
Yes, my final comment. So basically, my final comment is food systems transformation is going to be a partnership. On the one hand, partnership between governments and their citizens, or the diverse communities within their countries. And on the other hand, partnership between governments and development partners. But for all this to happen, it means there must always be inclusive and constant review and dialogue. And I think this is the point that Jim just mentioned. We need to have an accountability mechanism for what member states have committed to in this UN Food System Summit. And in Africa, we already have that mechanism around our CADA annual review every 2 years. And we would be glad to build on this to be able to report on progress in the commitments for the Food System Summit, and also perhaps share this lesson with the rest of the world. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Let's come back then to Jeff and then Gilbert.
Jeff Rowe.
Jeff Rowe.
Yeah, good. Thanks. Yeah, I'll be very short because I know we're short on time, but I would just say very simply, change the perception of agriculture. Build trust with society to know that agriculture can be a very big part of the solution, bringing incredible innovation in a way that promotes not only more productivity, but climate-friendly solutions, and to do it through partnerships that are inclusive and bring equity.
Thank you. Gilbert, your last point.
Thank you. My last point or points are that I would like to confirm the fact that African smallholder farmers are low-income producers, and therefore they are more vulnerable to climate change. The consumers as well are low income and would be affected adversely by anything that raises prices of food. And therefore, we would expect that the developing world, the Western countries, support African producers to increase their productivity and therefore reduce cost of production and prices of food in the markets in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Duke, we're going to give you the last word.
Thank you, Barbara. That's very kind. Just 3 last points that I would like to make. My big 3 takeaways from the discussion today and really all week. First of all, the importance of cooperation across regions, across the globe, across and within societies, enabling innovation at all levels and sharing best practices. Second, I think we've had a very common theme today on the importance of inclusion, because we never know where those best solutions are going to come from. So the more inclusive we are, the more likely we are to have the people involved who are going to have the solutions or parts of the solutions to these very complex problems. And then just lastly, the importance of basing our decisions, our policies on science. And as much as we can, we know it's not always 100% possible, but as much as we can, trying to get the politics and the ideology out of the way and being very pragmatic and relying on science. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's a great summary, actually, right there, of a lot of what was brought forward, but so many gems today. I thank all of you for being here today, for taking your time from all over the world and from so many diverse perspectives. We appreciate the discussion, and we have a wonderful closing speaker, Beth Bechtel, the Deputy DG, the Director General of FAO, is waiting online for final comments. So everybody get ready to flip to the next Whova link. And thank you all for being with us. And we'll see you in the next session.